Hello and welcome back to the weekly gaming news show. This week we're covering Trump meeting with game developers and publishers, all the way to Far Cry 5's trailers having people ranting and raving. But first, State of Decay 2 has a release date. So as you know, State of Decay 2 was announced to release later in 2018, towards fall or winter, but they seem to have pushed it a lot forwards to May 22nd. Now, a lot of people are concerned because usually when a game's deadline or release date has been rushed forwards means that there's usually going to be a unfinished product, which doesn't mean that they're not going to release the game in its fullest state. They are. It just means that they're going to release the game in a buggy state. Things may not work the way they should. Things may seem like they didn't really have time to finish things off. And ultimately that's what people are worried about. But I have spoken to one of the developers in a back and forth on Twitter, and earlier last year they assured me that development seems to be going smooth and they're adding a lot of new content on top of what was the first game. And all in all the game shouldn't really have that much of an impact, or at least shouldn't be as bad as people are worried it to be. Now, the most surprising thing about this game is its launch price. A lot of games usually go for $40, $50 to $60 on launch and even long after launch, but State of Decay 2 is launching with a $30 price tag for the base edition, and the Ultimate Edition is gonna have a $50 price tag. Now, we don't know what's in the Ultimate Edition. Some people have speculated extra day one DLC, some people have speculated that you're going to be getting the season pass in it, but right now we haven't been able to get a reliable source for it. But for the game to launch so cheap, especially in 2018, is actually quite amazing. I didn't think that another game company, especially one like Undead Labs, would have taken something like this and released at such a low price. Hopefully they got a lot in terms of content planned for the future for the game as well. Moving on to Far Cry Blood Dragon. A lot of people seem to be incredibly excited for this game, and I am as well. If you get your game trailers done by Blur Studios, you're gonna hook me into whatever game you've got. It doesn't matter if it's gameplay or it's just CGI footage. Blur are amazing what they do, and I love Blur and how they do it. But what has people incredibly excited for the new DLC, or the new DLC trailers I should say, is the fact that not only are they giving us DLC set in Vietnam or Mars, and also having some sort of like zombie horde mode kind of thing going on, it's also taking a note out of Far Cry Blood Dragon. If you don't know what Far Cry Blood Dragon is, essentially they took Far Cry 3, reskinned it a little bit, gave it a new story, and added a lot more content to it, and essentially sold it as a standalone game for, I think, like 50% of the original price of the full Far Cry 3 game. And although people thought this is a scummy move, people then soon came to realize this is actually an amazing game. Far Cry Blood Dragon did so well that it was estimated to do better than Far Cry 3. And now they seem to be taking the whole retro-futuristic take on things. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people loved about Far Cry Blood Dragon. It wasn't just a retro-style shooter, it was a retro-futuristic shooter. It was like watching Terminators back when it first came out, but you're playing it, and it's so much fun, and it's self-aware. It makes fun of the fact that it's a video game, and that a lot of video game tropes are dumb. The development team behind Far Cry Blood Dragon had so much fun making the game that I don't think they'll have nearly as much fun developing any other game in the near future. But in terms of Far Cry 5, I don't exactly know where it lands them. A lot of people have already said that they pre-ordered the game, and as much as I'm against pre-orders, you can do whatever you want with your money. It's not up to me to decide what you can do or don't do. But a lot more people are starting to say that they're willing to pre-order now, knowing that they're actually planning to put actual content in the game. Now, some people have used this as a way to say Ubisoft aren't putting enough in the game, that's why they're selling you day one DLC. And I don't think that's the case. Ubisoft have expressed their content with not only shoving in actual content into a game, but also actually trying to make sure that whatever you're playing, you'll be playing for a long time. Just look at The Division and Rainbow Six Siege. Both of them are huge, and they could have just easily been cash cows. Just pay money, the game dies within a year or two, move on, get the next game rolling. but the development teams are still strong and full. They've not sacrificed anybody in terms of actually trying to make another game from it. And that's kind of detracting from the speculation that is The Division 2. And although I don't think that they are making a Division game, and if they are, I don't think they should. I think they should stick with the first one they got and make sure that it lasts. It's going to be interesting where Far Cry 5 goes. I know I went on a bit of a tangent there for a second, but I pass it off to you. What do you think Far Cry 5 is going to be? Or how do you think the DLC are going to play out? And how do you think the main game is going to play out, actually? I'm moving on to our last but not least story, and honestly, I think this is one of the more important stories, and I won't get political with this one. I don't think it's necessary to have a political conversation to at least put in your opinion on somebody's decisions. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the shooting that went on in Florida last Valentine's Day, and as tragic as it is, people were very quick to blame video games once again, but also media as a whole. Some people saying movies and rap music, some people just saying movies, but Trump seems to be pushing this whole video games are one of the biggest contributing factors for violence in schools. And although I don't think this is necessarily true, he's going to be meeting with developers and publishers and also some representatives from the industry as a whole on the matter, and I don't know what is going to come of this. I don't see what he can do to change anything, because it's not video... If video games being too violent is an issue, then that's not on the industry, it's on the parents. The parents should be letting the kids play the incredibly violent games. I know Steve, he doesn't let his son or daughter play violent video games, or ones very violent, especially if they're out of the age limit. Like, the rating system that's there to say T for teen, 12 and up, 16 and up, 18 and up, it's there for a reason. It's not there just as a flashy number. It is there to warn you this is recommended for people of these ages and above, because they show things like violent content, sexual content, some drug abuse, alcohol abuse, things like that. They do show a lot of games do show things along those lines, more so violence than anything else. And I do understand why a lot of politicians and people in political authority are saying the media and video games are to blame, because you see how violent or how much violence is within those pieces of culture, of pop culture. You realize, okay, it's an easy way to explain it in a way. They've just watched one too many Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and he thinks, I could do that, or he's played one too many games of Call of Duty. But that's not the case. Things like this are not so cut and dry. It's not so black and white, and you have to look at the grey area. And if you just neglect the grey area, whatever you impose from there has everlasting consequences, both good and bad. And I think it's important to make the distinction. Just because you play violent video games doesn't mean that you're a violent person. There are people with anger issues that get angry at video games and will destroy things like controllers, TVs, and sometimes even their consoles. But that doesn't exactly mean that they learned that from the game. And you can research studies, recent studies as well, saying that violence in people is not actually influenced by violence in video games. But I pass the question off to you. What do you think about video games? What do you think about Trump speaking to the developers and publishers of the video games that we all play and enjoy? What do you think could come of it all? And what do you like? And do you think the media as a whole is a contributing factor to the just people going out and shooting schools or shootings in general? And on that note, I'll catch you guys in the next one.